They say the deepest cuts come from the ones we trust the most. And I learned that the hard way, when I saw the ring I helped him buy, on another woman's hand. Let me take you back to the version of me that loved too hard and believed too blindly. My name is Jade. I used to think that love was enough. That being loyal, supportive, and patient would be the recipe for a forever kind of love. And for years that belief shaped every choice I made with Marcus. Marcus was the kind of man who could charm a room without trying. Tall, suave, ambitious, he was the kind of guy people naturally gravitated toward. And I was the girl who stood beside him through it all. The one who cheered for him when no one else clapped. The one who loaned him money when he lost his job. The one who picked up his broken pieces and glued them back together with my bare hands. We met in college. He was studying finance, I was in design. I remember he walked into the campus cafe, ordered black coffee, and sat down next to me like we were already friends. That confidence, that warmth, it pulled me in. And once he saw that I was someone who'd give without keeping score, he pulled me in deeper. By the time we both graduated, we had lived together for 2 years. I helped him pay his tuition's final balance. I used my small inheritance from my grandmother to co-sign his first car. I took care of our bills while he chased his dreams, even when mine had to wait. He'd always say, "Jade, one day I'm gonna make it big and I'll give you the world." And foolishly I believed every word. He told me he was saving up to propose. That he wanted it to be perfect. I didn't care about perfect, I just wanted real. But he insisted on buying a ring worthy of everything I've done for him. He even asked me for help. We browsed rings online together, visited jewelers. When he struggled to make the down payment, I offered to loan him the rest. "It's our future," I told him. "Of course I'll help." He smiled that crooked smile of his, kissed my forehead and said, "I don't deserve you." I should have known then he meant it. Because the truth was he didn't deserve me. Not even close. 3 months later he started acting distant. Said work was draining him. That he needed space to figure some things out. I chalked it up to stress. I cooked more. Loved harder. Prayed more. I didn't know I was loving a man who had already checked out of our story. Then came the night everything crumbled. I was scrolling Instagram when a story popped up from one of his old college friends. It was a video. Champagne, petals on the floor, soft music playing in the background. I almost smiled thinking, oh wow, someone's getting engaged. Then the camera panned. It was Marcus. Kneeling in front of another woman. Holding the ring I helped him buy. I froze. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even breathe. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. My hands trembled as I replayed the video. Again and again, hoping I'd see it wrong. Hoping it was a prank. A commercial. A sick joke. But it wasn't. It was real. He had taken everything I poured into him and handed it to someone else like I was just a stepping stone in his climb. He blocked me the next day. No explanation. No goodbye. Just silence. The betrayal wasn't just about love. It was the way he discarded me like I never mattered. Like I was just a placeholder until something shinier came along. I didn't eat for days. I didn't leave my room. The world kept spinning but I was stuck, replaying every memory, every sacrifice, wondering where I went wrong. But eventually, the anger came. And with it clarity. This wasn't about me not being enough. This was about him never being worthy of what I gave. They say heartbreak cracks you open. That it doesn't just hurt, it changes you. And they're right. For a while I wore that pain like second skin. I moved through life like a ghost. My appetite vanished. My creativity? Gone. I stared at my sketchpad for weeks and couldn't draw a single line. I couldn't recognize the woman in the mirror anymore. My eyes looked dull, like someone had reached in and stolen the fire from my soul. I deleted my social media. Not just to avoid seeing Marcus, but to protect what little pieces of me I had left. Every photo, every memory, every comment from friends who didn't know the full story, was like acid on an open wound. But pain is funny. It doesn't just tear you down. Sometimes it dares you to rise. One evening I found myself back at my grandmother's old house. The same one I used as collateral to help Marcus get his car. I hadn't been there since she passed. The paint was peeling, the windows foggy with dust. But inside there was warmth. Memories of her telling me, Jade, storms don't last, baby. But strong women do. I sat in her old sewing room and let the silence wrap around me. I wept not just for what I lost but for how little I had valued myself. I remembered how my grandma used to stitch beauty out of broken fabric. And it hit me I could do the same with my life. So I began rebuilding. Quietly. Fiercely. I got a part-time job at a local interior boutique. Nothing fancy, but it paid the bills and gave me room to breathe. I started sketching again, this time for me, not for a man. I redesigned the living room of my grandma's house, then the kitchen. Before long, neighbors took notice. "You've got a gift," they said. "Do you do this professionally?" I didn't yet. But I would. What surprised me the most, though, wasn't just the healing. It was the fire that followed it. A burning need, not for revenge but for redemption. Not for Marcus to pay but for me to rise so high he'd choke on his regret. So I got to work. I enrolled in business workshops. Took online design certifications. Learned how to market my brand. I called it Re-Jade, because I wasn't just finding myself again. I was reinventing her. And as I grew, so did my confidence. I started posting my work anonymously at first. Mood boards. Transformation videos. Design before and afters. People loved it. Orders came in. Clients emailed. My following exploded, not for my face but for my vision. And for the first time in a long time I realized I was building something for me. One day I got invited to speak at a women's empowerment event. They wanted me to talk about resilience. About how I turned betrayal into a blueprint for growth. I almost said no. I didn't feel like some polished success story. But then I remembered the version of me who cried herself to sleep over a man who wouldn't even say goodbye. And I owed her this. So I stood on that stage, took a deep breath and shared my truth. No filters. No sugarcoating. I told them how I loved blindly. How I sacrificed too much. And how one moment of betrayal forced me to meet the version of myself I never knew existed. When I finished, the room stood in silence, then erupted in applause. Women lined up to hug me. Some cried. Some thanked me for saying out loud what they'd buried in their hearts. That night I went home and cried again. But this time it wasn't out of pain. It was pride. Because I didn't just survive Marcus. I reclaimed myself in the process. And life, it was just getting started. You know that moment when the pain becomes fuel? That moment when the tears dry up and what's left is a quiet, burning fire in your chest? That's where I found myself. Alone, shattered, but no longer willing to stay broken. After Marcus vanished, my world felt empty. The apartment we once shared felt like a haunted museum of memories. His cologne still lingered in the bathroom. His old hoodie sat on the couch. Every object was a ghost reminding me of the woman I used to be. The woman who gave everything and received nothing in return. One night I stood in front of the mirror, staring at my own reflection. My face was pale, eyes sunken, hair unkempt. I barely recognized myself. I whispered aloud, "This isn't how my story ends." And from that moment on I made a promise, to take my power back piece by piece. I started with the small things. I threw out every trace of him, his photos, his notes, that damn hoodie. I deleted the messages I had saved, hoping someday they'd make sense. I unfollowed mutual friends, left group chats, blocked numbers. I wasn't erasing the past, I was reclaiming my future. Next I focused on my body. I joined a small gym down the street, not to glow up for anyone else but to feel strong again. Every drop of sweat was a reminder that I was still alive. Still fighting. Emotionally, I dove into therapy. I had so much grief and anger buried inside and it was poisoning me. My therapist helped me see that love isn't about how much you give, especially when you're pouring into someone with holes in their soul. She said something I'll never forget. "Jade, you weren't loved less because of who you are. You were betrayed because of who he is." I cried that day. But it was the kind of cry that rinses the soul. I walked out of that session lighter than I had in months. And I began dreaming again. You see, I had always wanted to launch my own design studio. I'd put that dream on hold for Marcus, waiting for him to make it so I could follow. But no more. I wasn't waiting on anyone's green light to chase my destiny. I dusted off my old sketches. Rebuilt my portfolio. I used the last of my savings to create a small website and began offering branding services for small businesses. It started slow, one client here, two there, but it grew. Word spread. I poured my heart into every project and people noticed. Within a year, Jade and Company wasn't just a business. It was a movement. A symbol of what happens when a woman turns pain into purpose. And I didn't stop there. I started a blog sharing my story anonymously. I wrote about heartbreak, about resilience, about learning to love yourself after being discarded. The messages I received? Countless women telling me, "This happened to me too." I thought I was alone. "Thank you for saying what I couldn't." Their words gave me strength, and I gave them hope. But just as I was rebuilding, fate came knocking with a little twist. A woman emailed me one evening, requesting a rebranding consultation for her boutique in Manhattan. We scheduled a Zoom call. Her name? Elena. I had no idea who she was, until her camera turned on. My heart stopped. It was her. The woman Marcus proposed to. The same woman from that Instagram video. But she looked different. Her smile was hollow. Her eyes tired. And her voice, fragile, like something had cracked deep inside her. She had no idea who I was. And I didn't tell her. Not yet. But as we began working together, the truth started unraveling. And what I learned. Marcus hadn't changed. If anything, he had become worse. He hadn't just used me. He was using her too. And what she revealed would flip everything upside down. The universe has a wicked sense of humor sometimes. One moment you're healing, genuinely healing, and the next you're staring into the face of the woman who replaced you, now unknowingly walking into your life like fate's little punchline. Working with Elena was surreal. She was nothing like I expected. From her social media, she looked like a goddess living her dream life. Glamorous, adored, spoiled by love. But in person, she was quiet. Nervous. Always glancing off camera during our calls as if someone was watching her. Her boutique was struggling and she admitted she'd invested everything into it. Because Marcus had convinced her to. At first I thought, serves her right. You took my man, now karma's knocking. But as the days went on and we worked more closely, I started seeing the cracks in her perfect life. One evening we stayed late on a project. She looked exhausted. I asked if she was okay. She hesitated, then whispered, "Can I tell you something? Off the record." I nodded, heart pounding. She took a deep breath and said, "I think I made a mistake marrying Marcus." And just like that, the truth started pouring out. Marcus had changed the minute the wedding ring slipped onto her finger. The sweet, charming man who proposed with roses and promises had vanished. In his place was a cold, controlling manipulator. He drained her savings under the guise of investing in a business idea he never started. He monitored her calls, dictated what she could wear, who she could talk to, and even how she ran her store. Worst of all, he guilt-tripped her constantly. Told her she was lucky to have him, that no one else would want a woman like her. Sound familiar? I was stunned. Not because he was still the same monster, but because I finally understood. It was never me. His betrayal had nothing to do with my worth. It had everything to do with his emptiness. But I wasn't about to comfort Elena. Not yet. Not until she knew exactly who I was. So I did something bold. The next day I printed out the photo Marcus had framed and kept on our wall for years. Me and him celebrating the anniversary he swore he never forgot. I brought it to our next in-person meeting. When she walked into the cafe, I slid the photo across the table. Her eyes scanned it. Her lips parted. She looked at me and froze. "I know who you are now," she whispered almost inaudibly. Silence sat between us like a bomb waiting to explode. "I was the one before you," I said calmly. "I gave him everything. Just like you are now." Her hand trembled as she reached for her iced coffee. "He told me you were crazy. That you were just some obsessed ex who wouldn't let go." I almost laughed. "Isn't that what they always say?" I leaned in and met her eyes. "Does that sound like me now?" She shook her head, tears beginning to well up. "No. It doesn't." There in that cafe, two women who had been pitted against each other by lies and lust became allies. We spent the next 2 hours unraveling the timeline of his deceit. The overlaps. The gaslighting. The way he'd copied and pasted the same lies between us like it was his sick little game. He hadn't just betrayed me. He betrayed us both. But Elena still felt trapped. "I don't know how to leave him," she said softly. "He's got control of everything. My money, my lease, even my phone bill." I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Then we'll take it all back. Together." Because this wasn't just about heartbreak anymore. It was about justice. It was about showing Marcus that the women he tried to break could rise from the ashes and burn down the fantasy he built on our pain. We started planning. Elena gathered documents, bank records, text messages, emails that showed manipulation and financial abuse. I contacted a lawyer I'd met during my blog's rise, someone who specialized in helping women leave toxic marriages. And together, we set the trap. Marcus had no idea what was coming. But soon he would. Marcus had always walked through life as though the world owed him grace. Charming smiles, well-tailored lies, and the art of emotional warfare disguised as love. He never thought the women he discarded would ever have the strength to rise. But what he didn't account for was that sometimes, a broken heart becomes the most dangerous weapon of all, especially when it heals around purpose. After reconnecting with Elena, the days that followed were meticulous and measured. We didn't act out of impulse. We moved like women with intention. Elena began gathering documents, financial records, silent screenshots of his double life. I showed her how to trace digital transactions and log every inconsistency. Every late-night whisper that once made her feel crazy now lived on tape, thanks to a recorder she kept hidden in a ceramic vase by the entryway. Each step toward reclaiming power was slow but certain. And with every folder we filled, every file we backed up, I felt the old version of myself returning, not just stronger but wiser. The kind of woman who knew the value of her silence and the danger of her voice. We worked with a lawyer, one who didn't flinch when we laid out the evidence of Marcus's manipulation. Emotional abuse, financial coercion, deceit. It was a symphony of betrayal dressed in sophistication. The lawyer called it textbook. We called it our reality. When the day finally arrived to confront him, it wasn't with shouts or chaos. It was precise, clean, unshakable. Marcus had no idea. That morning he strolled into Elena's boutique like nothing had changed, expecting to be worshipped. He didn't notice the quiet man by the window, nor did he pay attention to the silence that greeted him instead of the usual warmth. He didn't expect Elena to be waiting not with tears, but with documents, witnesses, and truth. What happened next wasn't a spectacle, but a carefully orchestrated unveiling. A process server handed him the envelope that would change the course of his charmed little empire. Restraining order, lawsuit, divorce filing. His charm faltered. The smirk that once disarmed every woman in the room was replaced by confusion, then panic. For the first time, Marcus looked like a man cornered. He glanced at Elena, who met his gaze with the quiet steadiness of someone who had nothing left to fear. And then he turned and saw me, standing not behind her but beside her. It was in that moment that the recognition hit him. His past. His consequences. Me. The control he held over us, once so absolute, crumbled like ash in the wind. He muttered something under his breath before storming out, wounded pride dragging behind him. But this time he couldn't rewrite the ending. The script was ours now. That evening, Elena and I didn't celebrate with champagne or parties. We sat together on her small balcony, sharing takeout and stories, our laughter blending with the hum of the city. There was a lightness in the air that neither of us had felt in years. It wasn't just relief, it was reclamation. For the first time, we weren't rivals or victims. We were survivors. Women who had loved the same man, lost ourselves in the same illusion, and emerged from the wreckage not bitter, but reborn. We promised ourselves that night that we'd never again be reduced to someone else's reflection. That our worth would no longer hinge on how lovable or desirable we were to anyone who couldn't love us fully. But Marcus wasn't finished. Because the thing about men like him, they never surrender quietly. And as the silence after the storm began to settle, a new ripple was already on the horizon. One last attempt to regain control. But this time he wasn't prepared for what we had become. We were no longer easy prey. We were a reckoning. I should have known Marcus wouldn't let us walk away without a final blow. Men like him aren't wired to lose quietly. When charm fails and lies are no longer enough, they reach for destruction like a drowning man grabs at air. It started with small things. Elena's business bank account was mysteriously frozen for fraud review. My email was hacked. Then my social media accounts were flooded with fake rumors and twisted half-truths. Anonymous blogs popped up online painting me as a bitter ex, an unstable woman trying to destroy a good man's life. But we knew the source. His fingerprints were all over it. Careless, entitled, angry. At first it shook me. For a moment I felt like that same naive girl again, paralyzed by shame and fear. But this time I didn't crawl back into myself. I didn't shrink. I documented every attack, every threat, every false narrative. And instead of hiding, I exposed it. I went public with my story, not the tabloid version Marcus tried to spin, but the truth. I wrote about the emotional manipulation, the betrayal, the way women like me were conditioned to apologize for our pain. I didn't name him. I didn't have to. The truth has a way of finding its target. And people listened. Women from all over reached out with their own stories, their own Marcuses. Some cried. Some raged. All of them understood. Elena, meanwhile, doubled down on her business. She rebranded, rebuilt, and for every door Marcus tried to shut, she opened 3 more. Her community rallied around her. Customers flooded in with encouragement and orders. She was no longer the woman behind the man. She was the woman who stepped out of his shadow and thrived. Marcus tried to sue us for defamation. The case fell apart within weeks. No evidence, no credibility. Just the empty threats of a man watching his control dissolve. That was when he realized he was truly alone. His charm no longer opened doors. It rang hollow in rooms now filled with people who had seen behind the mask. The final straw came when he tried to manipulate my younger brother, feeding him lies in hopes of turning him against me. That one hurt more than anything else. My brother had always looked up to Marcus. But when he showed up at my apartment that night, eyes wide with betrayal and confusion, I sat him down and told him everything. No dramatics. No accusations. Just the truth laid out plainly, calmly. He didn't say much. Just stared for a long time. Then he stood, walked out, and never spoke to Marcus again. That's when I knew, for good, that Marcus had lost. Not because we had fought harder or because we exposed him, but because we had removed ourselves from his story. We stopped needing to win against him. We simply moved on, stronger, louder, freer. And freedom, for a man like Marcus, is the one thing he can't stand to see in the women he thought he'd broken. As weeks passed, the noise faded. The rumors stopped swirling. His name vanished from our mouths, replaced by better things. Plans, dreams, beginnings. Elena traveled to Italy to study fashion design. I launched a blog that turned into a platform for women's stories. Raw, powerful, unfiltered. We stayed in touch, bonded by a shared history, yes, but also by the future we were building from its ashes. Marcus still existed somewhere out there, I'm sure. Probably telling a new woman half-truths wrapped in charm. But he no longer mattered. Not in our world, not in our peace. I had learned something no heartbreak had ever taught me before. The worst betrayal doesn't define you. What does, is who you choose to become afterward. And I had chosen to become someone he could never touch again. Healing isn't loud. It doesn't arrive with fanfare or applause. It's quiet. Like waking up one morning and realizing your heart no longer races at the sound of his name. Like smiling without guilt. Like sleeping through the night without your mind retracing every red flag you once excused. In the months that followed Marcus's unraveling, I stopped surviving and started living. I filled my space with things that reflected me. Not us, not who I thought I needed to be for him. Just me. The woman I had silenced while shrinking into his shadow. The woman who once questioned if she was enough. I began to paint again. Something I hadn't done since college. With every brushstroke, I spilled out pain I hadn't even realized I'd buried. And in the mess of colors and chaos, I found clarity. My hands no longer shook. My voice no longer cracked. I had found my center. And the world responded. My blog grew. Women reached out with stories that echoed my own. Different names, different places, but the same haunting patterns. We weren't alone. We had just been isolated, convinced that our scars made us weak. But we were never weak. We were warriors dressed in softness. We had just forgotten our strength. Elena's business, too, became a symbol of reinvention. She opened a new location, this time bearing her name, not his. The grand opening was packed and I stood by her side, proud and teary-eyed. We didn't talk about the past much anymore. We didn't need to. We had already outgrown it. One night I stood in front of the mirror. The same mirror I had once stared into while wondering what was wrong with me. But that night I didn't see failure or regret. I saw a woman who had been broken and rebuilt herself without apology. I saw survival. I saw grace. I saw power. And I realized something that might sound strange, but it changed everything for me. I no longer hated Marcus. Not because he deserved forgiveness, but because I deserved peace. Hatred, I had learned, was just another tether to the past. And I was done carrying him with me. Some people will never say sorry. Some will never see the damage they caused. But that's okay. Healing was never about them. It was about me. And now I walk with the kind of confidence that can't be faked. The kind that says, "You thought you destroyed me, but all you did was set me free." To anyone out there still trapped in the echo of someone else's betrayal, please hear this. You are not what they did to you. You are not the love they withheld or the lies they told. You are the fire that kept burning, even when they tried to smother you. Don't wait for their apology to heal. Don't wait for justice to feel whole. You are your own redemption story. Write it. Live it. And when they look back, let them see not the woman they left behind, but the one they were never worthy of in the first place. If this story moved you or reminded you of your own strength, I'd love for you to like, share, and leave a comment. And if you want more powerful stories that speak to the heart, make sure you subscribe to the channel. There's so much more to come, and I promise you won't want to miss any of it.